Speaking of lives, I'd love to live the life of Joel Klatt, the voice of college football. Boy, does he get a humdinger this weekend.
Right?
This is a game, my friend.
I know. Man, I can't wait for this one. This one's going to be great.
It's the kind of game you've earned. No regional matchups.
What do you mean?
This is the game of the weekend.
Yeah, no doubt.
So we're going to get to Penn State, Ohio State in a second because I think Penn State's better. By the way, 2 of the last 3 times the Buckeyes have faced a top 10 team. Penn State's on an 11-game winning streak, has a better quarterback. I think they have better energy in the program. I'm not going to wait till later. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we're just going to dive in. Let's dive in.
Let's be honest about it.
Let's do it.
I talked about a little tension at USC, which is healthy. You and I have tension. Healthy. My wife argues. Healthy. I like tension. I like conflict. There is this thing, though, with Ohio State. If Penn State lost 27-24, it'd be like, heck of an effort. If Ohio State loses this weekend, you go to that Reddit board, Buckeye.com.
Sure,
it's man overboard.
Yeah, no, that's not wrong. There was some of the stuff you said was wrong, but that sentiment is not wrong. You are correct. The pressure and the stress brought forth by that fan base at Ohio State is immense, and Ryan has been under it, and yet he really shouldn't be. He's 51-6 as a head coach. The only coach to reach 51 wins faster in college football history is Chris Peterson at Boise State. So he's been outstanding there. In fact, his only losses are in those big top 10 games, and yet he still won 9 top 10 matchups. Like, he wins those games.
It's a little less miles. He couldn't beat Nick, and they ran him out of town. I mean, not personal, but I mean in terms of Les Miles could beat everybody but Bama.
There is a lot of tension and stress and pressure because, in particular for this game, because, well, really 3 reasons. Okay, number 1, you're at home. It's like, hey, protect the shoe, and we're not going to lose at the shoe. The second one is that there's this sentiment that Michigan is still the top dog right now because of what they've done over the last couple of years. You can't lose to Penn State and put yourself in 3rd position in the division. That doesn't, like, for an Ohio State fan, that's just like, nope, like that, we can't have that.
Right.
Okay, so there's that sentiment. And then there's also, they're older than Penn State. They're more veteran.
Good
quarterbacks
point.
are the same age, okay? So they both have young quarterbacks, but the defense is a veteran defense at Ohio State. They've got veterans on the outside, in particular Marvin Harrison Jr. The core for Penn State is really sophomores. Their year is really next year.
Yeah,
Penn State.
They'll be a preseason 1, 2, or 3 with Drew Aller.
Yeah, I would guess,
Drew
and they
Aller,
would still
the
have Abdul Carter, the linebacker, both of those running backs, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. They would both be back because they're sophomores. So there's this sense that Penn State is still building, whereas Ohio State, it's like, we want it now.
Yes.
And to be fair, Ohio State fans feel like that every day of the year.
But I could argue this for Ohio State fans. Michigan's better now, and Penn State's better next year. And you're right in the middle. The middle child's got all the therapy issues.
Maybe, I mean, teams can transform so quickly in this day and age, right? With NIL and transfer. So it's hard to just say exactly what a team is going to be next year or this year. I will say this though, like this game screams to me like heavy pressure, and yet in my mind, Ryan always answers the bell with great game plans in this type of environment. Think about some of the playoff games. Even the one that he lost to Clemson and Trevor Lawrence, they had a great offensive game plan.
Well, the
last
Georgia
year against
game,
Georgia,
they outplayed them.
They outplayed Georgia. When they get put in a corner, when they get backed into a corner, which there is a little narrative about that, you have to win, you got to do this or that.
The pressure's on Ohio State.
The pressure's on Ohio State. They tend to deliver in those moments. Now, they didn't against Michigan in the last couple of years, but this feels like a game that you're going to get the very best from Ohio State. Now, we'll say this about Kyle McCord, their young quarterback. He's outplayed Drew Aller to this point in the season. He's been in a bigger stage now on the road at Notre Dame, whereas Aller is really making his first real road start of his career. He started at Illinois and Northwestern in his career. I mean, I don't know if there were total fans in both of those games, the number of fans that are going to be in the shoe on Saturday. In fact, I know
well,
that
that's the first top 10 team he's ever played.
That's right.
It's very exciting. Need a spotter?
No.
Who's your spotter? You got to. You know what?
Need
a second?
Me and myself and
Folks, this is going to be. So speaking of that, I was at the best game in the country last week.
That's right. You told America I was invited. I took the invitation.
May have been the governor, may have been a friend, either one.
Either one. Or both. Could have been both.
Here's what I loved about it. LSU, Colorado, USC, a lot of transfers, a lot of flash. I watched two foundational programs, great coaches, great players. Here's my question.
Really? The tackle for Oregon was a transfer from Washington.
You can have one.
No, just continue. That's fine.
Here's my thing about
Michael
Washington.
Penix. Wasn't he a transfer? Oh, that's right. Go ahead.
Well, Kalen had
Wait, wasn't Bo Nix a transfer? Oh, that's okay. No. Continue. Go ahead. But you're right. They were foundationally built not through the transfer portal except for their quarterbacks.
That said, when you watch Washington's playmakers, first-round quarterback, first-round receiver, they didn't even have McMillan. That team's it's an offensive sport. How good is Washington?
Offense. Really, really good. This is a national championship caliber team.
When I was watching them, I'm like, I don't think they have a left tackle who's going to the NFL. If you can't get to Penix, you can't guard that offense.
And generally, you can't get to Penix. And Oregon did a great job, by the way. I'm impressed with both teams coming out of that game. So you were there. You felt the environment.
I thought Oregon was deeper and bigger. I thought Washington had more playmakers.
And more skill. And then in the end, they leaned into that skill. So a couple of thoughts on this game. I don't think anybody in America was going to beat Washington in that building Saturday. You were there. You felt it.
It was magic.
It was magic. Penix was playing great. I mean, even Georgia goes up there. Michigan goes up there. So because of that sentiment, I actually come away thoroughly impressed also with Oregon because of the way that they played and performed.
Even my Husky friends were like, I don't want to play Oregon again.
That's right. There's a sentiment of like, boy, I don't want to see that team again. At one point in the second half, Bo Nix was 20 of 24. He's experienced. He wasn't threatened by that environment.
At all.
Having said that, if you take a look at this game, here's what I loved about Washington and what they did and what I loved about their head coach, Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer has been with Penix for a long time, and in the most crucial times, he went NFL style, which is I'm going to let my guy do what he does best.
Deep.
I'm not going to sit there and say, like, this is what I want to do. This is what my scheme suggests. I'm going to say, like, he knows that he's got Penix in this instance, he knows that he's got matchups that he can exploit, and he's going to find those and then throw with great leverage to those one-on-ones, and he did so, and he found a Dunze, and he won the game because of it. On the other side, you had Dan Lanning, who doesn't have the same history with Bo Nix that DeBoer does with Penix. Lanning also has a first-year coordinator that he just hired from UTSA, Will Stein. Very bright guy, great future in this sport. But while DeBoer gives Penix the keys to go do what he does best in the 2 4th downs that are very controversial before the half for Oregon and at the end of the game, they took a guy in Bo Nix whose strength is operating a system in efficiency and has 53 starts under his belt, and they roll him out to basically cut off 3/4 of the field. Oregon's going to learn from that and get better from that. So the questioning of Dan Lanning about why go for it, this or that, to me, it wasn't about going for the 4th downs. It was the execution and the play call of what they tried to do.
That is really smart. I hear this all the time, is that execution, it's like when business people say, I've got an idea. Mark Cuban taught me this one time. Everybody's got an idea.
That's right.
Do you have the people to execute it? I didn't have a problem with the calls. I had a problem with their execution.
Well, to me, it was the calls, like you put them in position to where half the field is cut off. But you didn't have a problem
going for it.
I didn't. Maybe before the half, you could say, like, hey, listen, you don't have the advantage of getting possible field position if you fail. So before the half, would I have taken the 3 points? Yes. If I was in the same position at the end of the game, I would have gone for it as well. He's got one snap to win the game and not give the ball back to Michael Penix, and I would have taken it. Navy SEALs talk about this all the time. You can have the greatest plan in the world, but what does it come down to? When the team leader in the heat of the moment says and gives the order, execute, execute, execute. It's all about execution in those moments.
So I don't know. I like my wife likes to cook, and she'll have a glass of white wine, and she'll cook. And
Sounds lovely.
We'll discuss the day's events.
Yeah.
How are you, honey? Wonderful. And
I'm sure a discussion with you is lovely at the end of the day.
We break down the BCS standings. And so
from 8 years ago?
Yeah, we were early on it. We've been together 17 years. We were early on it. So The point is that we don't do microwaves much.
Oh, okay.
I've always had a thing about it. I think we're going to know in 100 years it killed us all, microwaves. But that's not here or there. I've always feared microwaves.
Where's the tinfoil?
The rays coming out into my food. I'm not into it at all. But I don't want to get into that now.
No.
I know I'm right, but I don't want to get into it. But here's my point. USC and Colorado.
Okay.
Little bit LSU. You're trying to microwave your program. USC has
what do you want them to do?
Well, all I'm saying is I was unrealistic. USC has 5 starters on defense that are transfers.
Okay.
Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan combined have 5.
Timeout.
There's too many transfers. First year. I'm
Time
talking
out.
Too much microwaving. Colorado.
I disagree completely. Oklahoma just had to microwave their defense. It's the only reason they just beat Texas. Do you know why? 6 of their 7, and they're too deep on their defensive line, transfers this year. 6 of 7. This year on their defensive line. Why? They had no competitive depth on their defensive line last year. That's why they gave up 40 points and 400 yards a game. You can say the same thing about, like, what is USC and Colorado supposed to do with what the defenses were?
No, it's not what they're not supposed to do. But what we're seeing is an unraveling of LSU, transfer-heavy, USC, Colorado. After about 6 weeks, 5 weeks, they're unraveling because the best year for Mac Brown was year 8.
But Michigan's also got great transfers that have added the depth. Josh Wallace is his corner. He's starting right now at corner.
Yeah, but he's been there for 9 years.
Hausman is adding their linebacker depth. Josiah Stewart, I believe he's their best pass rusher.
But USC, Colorado, and LSU, brand new coaches, putting in a system, transfers are great.
I just disagree because I like what do you want? Sometimes you have to use a microwave. Like sometimes, to use your analogy, you don't have 2 hours to cook dinner and enjoy a glass of white wine and talk about the BCS standings from 2013.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, hey, I got 3 kids. Like I got 11, 9, and 6-year-old boy, and it's like we got flag football in 37 seconds. Microwave the pizza, babe. The pizza now! Like, sometimes you just got to use a microwave. And Colorado and USC and LSU, to a certain extent, they had flag football in 37 seconds. And they needed their slice of pizza right now, or else there was just no chance to be competitive. Another thing that I would say is, like, when you're talking about USC, a lot of people look at this defense. The problem wasn't the defense against Notre Dame.
Well, against Notre Dame, it wasn't. And Notre Dame's offense is a BB gun. Come on. Wait until they face Washington and Oregon.
Well, they're not going to face Washington and Oregon because they're probably not going to be into the playoffs.
Well, no, Washington's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh, you're talking about USC.
Yeah, I mean, those are real offenses.
But right now, USC's offense is a BB gun because they can't protect Caleb Williams. If anything, they should have been deeper into the transfer portal to try to build their offensive line. See, Colin, it's the only way that you can actually improve yourself year over year quickly. It's a known commodity. I can't wait 3 years for Caleb. Caleb Williams needs some protection now. Did you know he's been pressured 58 times in the last 4 weeks?
Listen,
that's 5th in college football. They can't block anybody.
They couldn't block Arizona's defense.
So shouldn't they have gone out and gotten the 3 transfers that Michigan got on their offensive line that they're starting this year?
I'm not denying that transfers make you better. What I'm saying is we were all unrealistic on Colorado, LSU, and USC because if you don't have foundational years in, Mac, Dabo, Michigan, Brian Kelly's best team at Notre Dame wasn't the Manti Te'o years. It was 8 years later when they went toe-to-toe with Georgia. Is that I think I fell for the, look at all the 5-star guys at USC. And they don't have a foundation to go with the transfers.
Are you suggesting that they should be okay with being a worse team?
No, I'm suggesting that I overshot my expectations. I'm blaming me.
I see.
Yeah. I'm not blaming the program for getting good fast, but I was unrealistic on LSU. I called them a national championship.
So did I.
Well,
I was unrealistic about that as well. And the problem, I want to be crystal clear about this. The problem with USC last week was their offensive line.
Terrible.
And if Lincoln doesn't get the run game going, this is a problem down the stretch because they face way too many good and physical teams.
Washington, That's Oregon. Right. They'll get dogged by all of them.
That's right. And I'll just point to one stat. And far be it from me to like criticize his play calling because I think he's one of the best play callers in college football that I've really ever seen. But Marshawn Lloyd's only getting the ball 10 times a game, 10 carries a game.
Yeah.
He's leading college football in yards per carry. he needs the ball more. Because this, in its foundation, if you go back to what Lincoln did really well at Oklahoma, when they run the ball, that's when they're at their best. It's not an air raid system. They have air raid principles in their passing game, but it's not an air raid philosophy. So they've got to run the ball better. He only got 8 carries against Notre Dame. I think he needs to be at 15 to 18 against Utah this weekend.
All right, Klatt's top 10 before I talk some Michigan. Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Oklahoma, Ohio State. I think you have Ohio State too high. Penn State, Washington, Oregon, North Carolina, Texas. I think Oklahoma's a tad high, but whatever. Ohio State's a tad high, but whatever. I'm okay with it. I haven't watched enough Florida State.
I was a little frustrated that I didn't put Washington higher because of that great game and performance. I think that'll play out. The problem is that everybody ahead of them took care of their business. You're well, I wasn't high on Oklahoma. What do you want me to do? They just beat Texas. And that was an incredible game, and then they were on an off week. By the way, Ohio State played their best game against Purdue. No one probably cared to notice, but Kyle McCord's playing great football right before their biggest test of the year as Penn State comes to town. Watch out, Ohio State, once Ryan gets a beat on what his system is and what his guys can do, they usually take off. Yeah. This is the point in the season where the Buckeyes generally start playing really well.
Well, they did last year. And then they got whacked by Michigan.
Speaking of 19. Michigan. Oh, and they went to the national championship in 20.
Yeah.
And
how many of those big games they winning? So let's talk Michigan. So I hear a lot about NFL stuff, and I think to myself, it actually make more sense eventually for Lincoln Riley, an offensive coach in what has become an offensive sport, NFL. I actually think because of his ability to recruit and manufacture headlines, Harbaugh's a better fit in college. I think he means more. When I look at Harbaugh, I'm going to make the argument because all of us hit a point in age. Saban's about 70. We all hit a point in age where, the synapses don't fire. You watch politics. So look at Harbaugh's age. Harbaugh's the best coach in college football today. Prove me wrong.
I mean, it's hard to say that when Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are still doing what they're doing.
You can argue, but Kirby's in a state that produces 95 Division I athletes. Jim State produces 12.
Jim has built a great program, and he's done it in a unique way in a day and age in which the sport is built around offense and tempo and volume. He's gone the opposite direction and built his program about culture and toughness and power. Yeah, and grittiness and I've referred to them as like the boa constrictor of college football. They just kind of squeeze you to death, and they don't really panic. This is his deepest team that he's ever had. I will not be shocked if Michigan breaks the record of players drafted in one single draft next spring.
Listen, I honestly believe this, what I'm about to say. I think they blow out everybody, including Georgia. I think they'd
I don't know. Well, the thing is...
Don't think this is a 1988 Big Ten team that can't move.
This team
can do everything.
They're so complimentary. The problem is that they don't care if they're blowing you out. That's the difference, though, right? So, will they blow everybody out? I don't know. Maybe they could. But they're not trying to do that. They're just trying to win the game. Now, are they blowing some teams out? Yes. The key that people are missing with Michigan is that think of this as the traditional Harbaugh team. Methodical, physical.
All of them are.
Run-oriented. Now, J.J. McCarthy takes them to a different level when he needs to or wants to. And when he can get outside of the pocket and when he can make plays outside of the pocket. So now they have a different level. They saw it last year against Ohio State when on the road, J.J. elevated their team in the second quarter, got big plays down the field. He did elevate their team against TCU to a certain extent, but this is where I think that they're a little bit different, is they are fundamentally the deepest, most physical team in college football currently. And then they also have a quarterback that can take them above the X's and O's. I think they're probably the best team in college football. I still have Georgia ranked number 1 right now, only because they've kind of earned that spot. But, boy, it's going to be tough to beat that team. Of all the teams that I've covered this year live, they're by far the best. And I've seen Penn State. I've seen Ohio State. I've seen Michigan.
2 different coaches, P.J. Fleck, and there was another one, that have said that's the best college team I've ever faced.
Yeah.
I mean, they are that deep. When I watch them play, you know what's interesting is that not only are they good, But Harbaugh's always had not a conservative nature, but I think he kind of gets something out of grinding you.
Sure.
Boa constrictor. Now they're just a little saucier because their defense.
Well, because McCarthy can do that.
That's right. And so Jim's like, take a few more chances now. My defense will hold, and my offense is capable of scoring quickly. So you get all the upside of a Harbaugh team, even those Stanford teams. When he had luck, he had so much confidence in his quarterback. Jim takes pride, foundation, repetition. I think he's got a little sauce and juice on this team that you get a little more aggressive, Jim.
Probably.
Willing to take more chances with all that foundational excellence. Am I not? That's what I see.
I don't think that you're wrong. I would just say this from on a personal standpoint. I've met with Jim now for a long time. I did his first game at Michigan, by the way. Remember, we sat there.
He wouldn't
in
talk to
Utah.
me at that point. Now we're friends.
That was your first week at FS1, I believe.
Couldn't even get my hair right. Let's
move
on.
I remember that. I remember those pictures. That's all right. It's better now. I just, from the moment that Jim that I met with that week before the Utah game, walking through those subsequent years to the Jim I just met with last week before the Indiana game, is he'll say he hasn't changed. I'm here to tell you he is wildly different. Wildly different. He is more approachable. He's more personable. He talks about his players in the most glowing way of any coach that I sit with. Okay? And this is something that I really respect. I sit with coaches sometimes that take shots at their players, and he doesn't do that. And he talks about how much he loves them and how much he cares for what they have done to build the program the right way. He talks about how much fun he has coaching them. Then they come up and they talk about how much they love him and how much they love playing for him.
I'm getting goosebumps.
It's crazy because it wasn't always this way. The culture of that program and his personality has changed dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years. And when I sit now with that organization, it's like, it's going to be really tough to beat Michigan this year, just for anybody.
Duly noted. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.